Oh, it seems to be working. Hello, ni hao, xin zhao, whatever else your greeting of choice may be, from a somewhat unpleasantly hot end of November day here in Haiphong, Vietnam. It's 24th, 25th of November today. Gonna be putting up the Christmas tree in a week, and it is currently 26 degrees, and it is scheduled to get 1 or 2 degrees hotter than this, which is actually the perfect intro to this video, because I'm already in training for my next marathon. And what I wanted to start this video by saying is that due to the stupidly long summers in this country and very brief winters, at least in the north, no winters at all in the south, I have a choice between starting marathon training when it's painfully hot or ending marathon training when it's painfully hot. And considering the goal is to run the perfect race, or as close to as possible, that only really leaves me with the option of getting stuck in when it is still painfully hot and painfully sweaty. But yeah, it's kind of my announcement to say that I've started marathon training. As you may already have gathered, I'm not really very on top of my scheduling, and so I'm already about 8 or 9 weeks in. But nevertheless, I did want to do a quick little rundown of some of the key changes that I have made to my training plan and training philosophy going into my marathon for, well, it's in January, so I guess next year. Because while my previous 5 marathons all followed more or less the same plan, with a few tweaks here or there, evolving over time, this time, for the first time, I've decided to write my own training plan. First big change I'm making is clearer periodization. So while I did kind of periodize my old training plan in that I'd start with 3 or 4 weeks of speed work with only 1 workout a week, and then move into 2 workouts a week working on threshold and VO2 max, and then gradually moving away from VO2 max until by the end of the plan I'm essentially doing 2 threshold sessions a week. The changes sort of block on block were reasonably minor, whereas this time out I've got 4 fairly distinct blocks, where I'm starting off with a speed block where I'm doing 2 primarily speed focused workouts per week, then moving into a VO2 block where I'm doing sort of 2 5k, 10k, or maybe slightly faster than threshold focused sessions per week, then moving on to a threshold block where I'm hoping to implement double threshold training, see how that suits me, and then finally finishing on a marathon tempo block where I've got a bigger focus on running very slightly faster and very slightly slower than my marathon pace. So the next big-ish change that I'm making, as I just painstakingly detailed in the video that my GoPro decided to unilaterally delete, is adding in marathon-focused long runs. While I have included some marathon tempo work in some long runs in previous years, it's usually been things like 6 times 1 kilometer at marathon tempo with 1 kilometer jog recovery. And I've only really put them in the occasional long run where I'm feeling good. My goal this year is to try and include some marathon work in pretty much every long run I do. Even if that's on the lighter end, like the 6 times 1 kilometer workout I just mentioned. But I am trying to gradually build that up so that by the end I'm doing things like 6 or 7 times 10 minutes or 3 times 20 minutes at marathon pace with much shorter recoveries than the 1k that I used to do. And then on top of that, I'll also try and throw in some different sort of type of marathon work, like maybe 1k at 5 seconds faster than marathon tempo, followed by 1k at 5 seconds slower, and then just sort of cycle through that until I hit like 10k or 12k or 14k, or who knows. Because that's another thing about this training plan, is I know what kinds of workouts I want to do, and I've sort of scheduled in the general outline. But when it comes to how many reps and how much rest to take between each one, that's something that I'm just gonna have to trial and tinker with. This next one's a pretty big change from my previous plans, and it's adding in mixed purpose workouts or mixed pace workouts. So my previous plans, I'd have speed workouts, I'd have threshold workouts, I would have some marathon tempo workouts, but all of the work within each individual workout would be done at one single target pace. So for example, I would do 12 times 400 meters at 3-minute 40 pace. There'd be a warm-up, there'd be a cool down, and that would be the workout. Or 6 times 800 meters at 800 meter pace, like the next week. Then a different workout might be 4 times 2 kilometers at threshold pace. But it would be the same threshold pace for every single rep, and there would be no additional work sort of tacked on at the beginning or the end. Whereas this time out, what I want to do is kind of mix and match my paces for every individual workout. An equivalent example there would be something like 10 times 400 meters at 340 pace, followed by a little bit of a cool down, and then 2 kilometers at threshold pace. The idea there kind of being to extend the workout by adding extra load that targets different, maybe fresher systems, whilst also just providing a wider range of stimuli. The next thing I've added, which has a decent amount of crossover with the last point, is maintenance workouts, or maintenance blocks within a workout. So I said when talking about periodization that in my older plans, the first 3 or 4 weeks would be focused on speed work. But then as I moved towards sort of the VO2 max intervals and a lot more threshold work, I wouldn't do any work at those paces throughout the rest of the training plan. And theoretically, one possible downside of doing that is that a lot of the adaptations I will have gained in the first block of the training plan will be detrained by the time I get to the end. So this time out, I've been throwing in little maintenance blocks at the ends of workouts. For example, doing a speed session and then doing 1 or 2K of threshold, or later on in the training plan when I'm in my threshold phase, probably going to end my threshold sessions once a week with something like 6 times 200 at 5k pace or something, or 3k pace might make more sense. But just like a miniature speed session to send a signal to the body saying, hey, I'd still quite like this top end speed, so if you could just hold on to it for me, that would be lovely. Okay, we're getting towards the end now, and this next one is rest weeks. And again, this is a pretty big shake-up for me. So my previous approach to training was to do 3 weeks on, or 3 weeks with workouts, and then 1 week off. And for that 1 off week, I would cut back the mileage by 15% and not do any workouts. So that is no harder or more intense work for an entire week. The theory was, give my body a full week to recover, absorb the training, as people say, and leave myself fully refreshed to go at the next 3 weeks as hard as I can. Oh, well, as hard as I'm supposed to. Obviously, not every workout is max effort. But the upshot of that, at least I think the upshot of that, and I'm trying to test this out, is that I frequently found myself feeling sluggish during the first week back to full training after a rest week. And if you think about it, I was basically going from Thursday of 1 week to the Tuesday 2 weeks later without doing any intense workouts. So that's 11 days of nothing but easy running. So what I'm doing this time is, instead of having rest weeks with no workouts, I'm taking my rest weeks with reduced load workouts. I'm basically aiming to cut back to about 2/3 of the usual load. So if on a regular Tuesday I would do 12 times 400 meters at 5k pace, then on a rest week I would aim to do 8 times 400 meters. That way I am taking some of the load off and aiding in recovery, but at the same time I'm still sending the similar, if reduced, stimulus to the body to make sure it stays on top of things. The last big change is that I'm going to try and incorporate some double threshold training for the first time ever, because that seems to be what all the cool kids are doing these days. I will probably go over that in a little bit more detail in a dedicated training video when I get to my threshold block, so I won't go into it right now, other than to say it's a thing that I plan to do. And that is pretty much the video. I apologize for the changes of clothing and scenery. That was not a creative choice. I've been having some issues with my GoPro. I wasn't sure what was wrong. Thought maybe the SD card was corrupted. The formatting, it didn't work. I've now changed the battery and things seem to be going okay. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe there was something in there to find vaguely informative. Maybe something to find vaguely entertaining. And that's kind of an overview of the major changes to my marathon training plan this year, and I hope to see you next time out.